Greetings, everyone. My name is Christina Gamble, and I'm the director of the Black Cultural Center here at Berea College. And I am honored to serve as the moderator tonight for our convocation. We are delighted to have Oney Judge visit with us today. Mistress Judge was the personal maidservant to Martha Washington from the time George Washington was elected to attend the Continental Congress until the end of his second term of presidency. She visits us from her home in Greenland, New Hampshire. We welcome Oney Judge.
Well, it sure enough is nice to see y'all here. People keep coming to visit me. I'm not exactly certain why. I think it was that newspaper article that was in the Liberator. Folks hearing that I was who I was. And they keep making their way here like you all do. Come to ask an old woman about what she done. Well, you sit a bit with me. We'll warm ourselves here. My name is Oney Judge. I was the personal maidservant of Martha Washington. Do you babies know who Martha Washington is? That's right. She was the wife of the first president of this United States. Mistress Washington is who I work for. From the time I was 10 years of age, I was her personal maidservant. You know, I was born in Mount Vernon in Virginia, near Alexandria. My daddy's name was William Judge. He was an indentured servant, come from England. You all certain to know indentured servants. Well, indenture means contract. And he had a contract, an indenture with Master Washington. He was to do the tailoring work. That's how he got to know my mama. My mama's name is Betsy. She was a slave. She was a seamstress and a spinner. A fine one at that. My daddy, his indenture was for 7 years. And then he get his freedom. But he don't go too far. He's go to Alexandria. But not too long after, he go and move away with a new family. I learned then that freedom is important. When mistress asked me to be her person, she didn't ask me nothing. When she tell me I was going to be her personal maidservant, I was most most concerned a bit, but ain't had no choice in that. So that's what I has to do. I tell you, I had a lot to learn to do that right. I did. I had to learn how to take care of her. You see, a maidservant, I see some of you ladies here, don't know if any of y'all has a maidservant, but a maidservant take care of a woman from the one person from the early morning to the end of the evening, and at her bed and sit in her room with the fire, make sure that be placed, that the water be warmed for her when she awaken. And mistress, she awoke early, later than Master Washington. Master Washington woke at 4 in the morning, and to not disturb his good lady, he would go down the stairs and he would dress in a room off his office. She would be up for sir by 6 or 6:30, latest at 7. And I began my morning much earlier, so that when her eyes were open, I was there. I helped her to wash. I put her clothes on her. I knew her most closely. And gentlemen, you all may be aware that there be men servants, valets as well. William Lee, he was the manservant for Master Washington. I am certain that you heard of him. He was the one that went off with Master to fight in the war for independence. And he did not stay behind in the camp, but rode in the war with Master. Many a man came to Mount Vernon asking to speak to their brother in arms, William Lee. He taught me a great deal. I miss him. When I was 16 years of age, that's when the men come. They come that they come and they ask, they tell Master Washington that they have voted him to be the first president of the United States. Mistress Washington, she won't happen. No. She said, first you go off to Williamsburg for the House of Burgesses, then you come home. Then you go off to the Continental Congress in Philadelphia, then you come home. Then you go to fight a war, then you come home. Then you go to the Constitution Congress, then you come home. When you going to be the farmer you say you want to be? But, and this is most important, she was a woman of great duty, and she put her obligation in front of her desire. Yes, she did. I was there when he left, right after they had sent the letter. That was in April. It took us a month to prepare to leave. Mistress and Master had taken care of Wash and Nellie, the grandchildren of Mistress Washington. And so she was to take them up to the first Capitol as well. You all know where the first Capitol was, don't you? I'm always surprised when folk don't remember. The first Capitol, that was the one in New York City. Yes, indeed. Mistress did not want to go. And that's why we were slow in attending. But final, we made our way. I remember so well. Everyone gathered around the carriage. It was in the afternoon before we left. Her nephew had come. He was going to escort us up. 19 years of age. Not used to slowing down for a woman and children. And us, 7 slaves to take care of the new house and me to continue with Mistress Washington. There were many tears. Mistress saw those tears and took them for herself. But my mother cried. Me and my much older half-brother would be leaving. There were tears because none of us knew what would happen. Oh, when we started the journey, we first made our way to Georgetown. And there we saw the grandchildren's mama and their other sisters and brothers. We had wanted to leave at 5 in the morning. But through all the tears and goodbyes, it was all we could do to leave by 9. When we came to a place to ferry across, we ferried across without our horses, for horses were to be provided on the other side. When we got to the other side, Mistress wanted to walk. That was not uncommon. She enjoyed a walk. She enjoyed being around life. But it was to our advantage, for I walked behind her. And it was not too long before the new horses that had been put to the carriage, the new horse, not more than one, put to the carriage, he did not like that. And he bolted off with the carriage behind him and the children inside. It was great displays of discontentment. And the carriage was wounded a bit. Wash was excited about the ride. Nellie in tears. Mistress willing to turn around if she could. But we went forward with the new horse. We ventured into some of the most beautiful land I had ever seen. Even looking at small falls, it was well for the eyes. Then we came, after 3 days' ride, to the last ferry stop. Once we crossed this ferry, we would be in Baltimore. And there in Baltimore, she would give a speech to the gentlemen and ladies, the first of many to come. While the men took care of the horse and the children were left for the other slave to take care of them, I went with mistress to our room. I had expected that I would help her to change into clothes most appropriate for Baltimore and speaking. But when we stopped at the inn there, she went to the room and sat down. She was quiet and silent. I believe she knew her life would never be the same again. And mine would not either. When we finally arrived in New York City and we moved to the large home on Cherry Street, oh, there was much comings and goings. I met some of the first free Negroes that I begun to know well. I helped with the Thursday even dinners and the Friday even receptions. I had the ear of mistress. Folks spoke to me with kindness as well. You see, a maidservant everywhere the mistress goes, there I must be. But it was hard in New York. Master became quite sick. We had to put hay on the streets in front of him so that there would be no sound to disturb his quiet and his mind, so he could overcome the heavy cough. But he did so. And the capital was moved to, stop getting ahead of me there. That's right. The capital was moved to Philadelphia. Oh, I liked Philadelphia. Philadelphia had free Negroes there. Many, many more than New York. They had their own churches, their own schools, own dentists, own shoemakers. Yes, there were their own people there. Why, that Reverend Allen that was there with the A.M. African Methodist Episcopal Church, he was a shoemaker and chimney sweeper for Master Washington. We were able to go and visit many things. I went to see plays paid for by the Washingtons. I saw animals from other countries, balloons that rose high in the air. I was treated as a Washington. I dressed as a Washington. I had petticoats and gowns. I was of Washington. But I knew the truth. Every 5 months, Mistress would take us back to Mount Vernon, sometimes with Master, other not. I didn't mind, you see. I got to see my mama and my sister and brothers. My sister's name was Philadelphia. I used to say, I'm leaving Philadelphia to go see Philadelphia. Well, I thought it was funny. Every 5 months we'd leave. She thought we didn't know why. She thought that that she could keep a secret deep inside of her. But she did not know that we knew things. The reason we left every 5 months is because of the law in Philadelphia. The law say, if a slave be in Philadelphia for 6 months, they can get their freedom. Every 5 months, we was leaving Philadelphia. Every 5 months, we was leaving freedom. They tried to be in secrecy. And Mistress found out that I knew. I told her I had no reason to think upon leaving. And early on, I had none. Then 1795, my mama died. It took Master a long time to even tell me. It meant little to him. And then their daughter Elizabeth was to go and to get married. And we went back to Mount Vernon, and I had a sadness in my heart for my brother who had come with us. He also had died. He had been riding home to see his family, and his heart gave out. I had sadness then, but I was certain that one day Mistress would see fit in the way she treated me, that I would get my freedom. We go home to celebrate Elizabeth's wedding. And when we return, I hear Nellie, her granddaughter, much older now, whispering at night while I lay upon the floor between the door of Mistress Washington and Nellie. While I lay upon the floor, and she spoke to a young lady who I knew well, Betty Langdon. She exclaimed to her, Nellie did. As she exclaimed, she said, "Oh, Mama has broken my heart today. She has told me she will give Oney to my sister Elizabeth as a wedding gift. I had wanted her wedding gift. A wedding gift. I knew Elizabeth and her crossways. I did not want to be there, not with her. And then Master say he no longer going to be president and return home for good. And I had to make a decision, babies. So on Saturday, May 21st, 1796, a day that will always be in my mind. When I was given my leave at their even supper, I took my leave outside the doors. I had been given instructions that if I could find the ship on the Philadelphia dock called Nancy, captained by Captain George Bowles, God rest his soul, that I would have passage to a free state. I found that ship. I was secreted away from others so they would not be curious about me. And the 3-4 days on the water, my stomach turned over and over from the waters and the fear, as there was little to eat, less to drink, nor could I get my mind to do either. Afraid every moment someone would say, "Where is your master? Is not your mistress the good lady?" Then we come to New Hampshire, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. There were those of us who gathered, everyone gathered to get off of the ship, those that were merchants, those that were returning home. Me, I walked down the gangplank to the deck. And when I set my foot on the deck, the ground felt stronger because it was free ground. And when I smelled the air was clearer because it was free air. I was free. I was free. But I didn't stay that long. No, Jerry. I put myself to use, cleaning houses, using these. They were young hands a long ago that sewed a fine stitch. I sewed and cleaned. Then one day I was walking and someone called my name and I turned around. I should not have turned. And there she was, Betsy Langdon, the daughter of Governor of New Hampshire, John Langdon, and she herself, good friend of the Washingtons. I spoke not to her, I ran, but I knew she would tell. And with certainty, Master Washington wrote letters saying that because he himself had signed the Fugitive Slave Act, I was to be secured and sent back upon ship. But the people of New Hampshire refused. Letters were written to say that if my freedom could be procured, I would be sent back. And then when someone came to steal me back, I was given warning and was able to leave Portsmouth and move to Greenland. Oh, this house don't look much different than it's been for many a year. I've been married, had 3 children. My Jack, he died after the youngest one be born. William, Betsy, Nancy. William go off to work on ship as apprentice, never return home. Betsy, Nancy, they stay with me, good girls they were. As long as they took care of me when my hands would no longer work. When they was in their young 30s, never being married at all, they died 1 year between them. And now I, 73 years of age, I remain here, living with old folk. I run when I was 22 years old. I have known freedom longer than being a slave. And I will tell you this: freedom means everything. It is more than the clothes on your back. It is more than the shoes on your feet. It is more than the home that you live in. Freedom means everything. Everything. Lord, Jared. Oh, I get to talking so much, I forget to let other folks talk with me. You done come all this way. And just to hear an old woman talk, I'm certain you didn't. Well, if you would like to ask a question or two, then you may do so. But you might be quick about it. It is getting a little cooler in here now. Good day, Mistress Gamble. It is so fine to see you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Judge. And
Oh, yes.
we are so grateful for you to share your story with us.
Yes,
and if
yes.
anyone would like to put a question out there, we would love to be able to give that to Mistress Judge at this time.
I think they's a quiet people.
Your story's just so powerful.
Oh, Lord, my story don't hardly mean much. I just was given opportunity to, as Master would say, steal myself away. That's what he would say it was. But I took my freedom. I had a thirst for complete freedom. Yes.
All right. Looks like we have a question, Mrs. Judge.
Oh, all
What
right.
what do you wish you could have said honestly to the Washingtons?
I have no ill will with the Washingtons. Understand that. But I wish Mistress Washington had seen me. She was a woman with grandchildren when I was 10 years of age. I watched as she grew older. I heard her concerns for the change in her body, for her worries about creases upon her face and the way her hair was to be kept. Yet, when I began to become a woman, she never saw me. I would like them to know that we are in name slave, but in truth and in God's eyes, we are human like them.
Thank you, Mrs. Judge.
Yes. And I would never say that to her. Never, young lady. Oh, Lord, the trouble that would have come to me to speak out as such. I cannot imagine. Oh, yes.
I have a question for you, Mistress Judge.
Well, that'd be fine. Go on now.
Okay, so did you find it hard to tell your story at first to others, or were you always someone who found power in telling your story?
There's no power in the story. I don't understand that. But no, I told no one, for I was free for myself. But the law in the land said any time I could be taken and brought back to Virginia and be a slave. Any time. Even after both of the Washingtons died, I was still to be the property of their grandchildren. So I did not speak them. It was, you know, about rumors, things you think you have heard about someone. That is how it was until the Granite Freemen last year, 46, 45, they interviewed me. And then folks started to come like y'all coming around to hear about me and hear the story. I don't think there's any power in the story. I was just telling what I could do. Do you think there's power in the story?
I do. I do think there's power in the story, but we're so appreciative of you telling yours today. And we have just a comment for you, Mistress Judge, that
Oh, all
um,
right.
they mentioned that they wanted to thank you for your presentation, that it was an honor to
Oh,
have you here and your powerful voice. There goes that word power again. I'm honored to know your story and to have previous knowledge of your story. I love how you told your story and your strength in the darkest of times. We have a couple of other questions, actually.
all right, go on now. It's much better than you saying those things.
Did you feel like you had two ways of seeing seeing like they wanted you to see and seeing like you really saw?
Always. We always said, Mama said, and I knew I was raised to have two faces, one in front of Mr. Master and Mistress, and one behind our closed doors. Is that what you meaning by seeing?
That's right.
Yes. Always be two ways of how we act. I might be kind and good to someone who I may inside know has no goodness inside them to be for me to carry on as such. And there are times that we have ways to show displeasure. Oh, what Hercules. Hercules was the cook for a while. Fine cook he was. But if you enraged him, you were certain not to know what had been put into your food. Yes, yes. We all had ways of showing our displeasure about how we was treated.
Thank you. Another question, was laughing important for you to survive?
Yes. Laughing is a gift from God. Even God laughs. And you know from the good book, nobody would have followed Jesus had he not laughed sometimes. I don't like following them preachers that ain't got no laughing in them. Too serious. But we laughed because sometimes that's all you can do. I left, and when I did, I knew I could never return back to Mount Vernon. I could never return to all I had ever known. I could never see my sister again. I only held one time my other sister, Betty. She had a daughter and named her Oney. I held her only once. Freedom. Freedom also means sacrifice. I am tired, Christina. Good people, I must ask you to take your leave now. Remember what I said. Freedom means everything. Thank you for coming. You can show yourself out. Good day. Hello.
All right. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, Ms.
thank
Sheila
you.
Arnold. She has been performing since the age of 8. She presents storytelling programs, historic character presentations, Christian monologues, professional development for educators, and inspirational motivational speakers for schools, churches, and organizations throughout the United States. She also manages and contracts new business for Histories Alive, which mentors and provides opportunities and guidance for performers. Miss Sheila, as she is fondly called, has been performing full-time since 2003 and travels nationally each year. She is also an historical consultant, for museums, historical societies, and organizations. She also has received the honor of being selected as a Mount Vernon Research Fellow and a 2019 Hugh Noakes Artist Colony Summer Residence Noted Artist. In the past, she has worked as a drama ministry director, a Colonial Williamsburg employee, a substitute teacher, and social worker for aggressive teens with emotional problems. Sheila now lives in Hampton, Virginia, near her son, Christopher, her grandson, Brooklyn, and her father and stepmother, Wallace and Vera Arnold. She communicates often with her Atlanta-based sister, Stephanie. Thank you so much, Miss Sheila Arnold. And now we'll take questions.
Well, and I have to add one last thing that I should have put on there. And I am the first cousin of one of your own, Kathleen Bullock, and Kathy and her husband, Keith Bullock. So Kathy and Keith are Kathy's my first cousin, and we just love, I've gotten a chance to come to Berea a couple of, several times actually, since she was there. So many of you may know her. So just wanted to add that little note of my connection.
An important note at that. Yes. So we are so excited to have you here, and wonderful, wonderful presentation. Someone said you are just beautiful. And there is a question already for you.
Okay.
All right. Miss Arnold, what keeps you going?
Now, what do you mean? I'm going to need a little bit more. Whoever that was, they're going to have to give me a little
It was
bit more.
anonymous person. What keeps you going? Do we mean motivation through hard times?
Oh, well, just as myself, I suppose. I don't know. I really don't know what the context of the question is. So if that person wants to give me some more context of the question, I can give a better context of an answer. So I really, I love what I do. So I don't know.
Well, we'll see if that person gives us any more context, but we do have another question. What inspired you to become interested in history?
Oh, gosh, that is a lifelong thing. My father is a big history buff. My mother is not too bad a history buff. My dad is definitely one. So one of the things about being a daddy's girl, my dad had all girls, but being a daddy's girl, wanting to kind of look at the things my dad looked at. And so that was history. And I loved history. I was the kid that, even as a kid, was the one in the museum that read every single sign, and still do that today. So I'm an awful person. If you want to go to something, I read every single sign. I look at every single thing. I want to touch and see everything. And so that continued on. Eventually, I began to work with Colonial Williamsburg in Williamsburg, Virginia, at Colonial Williamsburg, which is the largest outdoor historic museum. Or historic character museum. So it was really, I started doing historic character work there, and I found I loved sharing history that way. And I also was given an inspiration by the director, at that time, the director of African Interpretive Programs. And she said, never be ashamed to portray your ancestors. And with that in my back pocket and in my heart, I started portraying women in history and doing historical programs. And now it's just a passion. I am absolutely passionate about presenting history through stories, whether I'm in character or not in character, but it's an amazing way to teach history and share history through stories.
Great, thank you. I think we have some more context for the first question.
Thank you.
What keeps you performing characters who have lived with so much pain? Do you take that pain into yourself, or is it freeing to do this work?
That is a great question. Thank you for the context. That I certainly wouldn't have gone in that direction. So you're right in that I do have almost all of my characters, the people I portray, have some depth of pain in them. And the one that doesn't have as much pain is the one I don't like doing the most. So I do 13 different women in history from the 1600s up to the 1970s. What I find is, and I also do women that are very little known. It used to be that Oney Judge, when I started doing her 13 years ago, that no one knew who she was. Now books have been about her and things like that. I'm certain somebody's working on a movie somewhere. But I didn't want to do women. I didn't like the fact that people only knew certain African American women. And that was Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and Rosa Parks. And that's pretty much where it stopped. And I wanted to do women that weren't seen, to remind us as people that even though our names might not be up in history, our stories deserve to be told. And that in our stories, we can have power that can influence other people, even if we don't understand that there is any power in our story as we tell it. Which was a great question, Christina, that you gave Oney. She would have never seen her words as power, ever. I mean, that wouldn't have crossed her mind. It was just her story, you know. And then the abolitionist used her story to kind of really talk about George Washington and him being a slave owner, but she never maligned them ever. So even though she told her story. So I do find that it's important to be able to share their stories. Sometimes their pain intersects with my pain. It has helped me to understand the dignity of the people called slaves. It's helped me to understand where people get a strength from that I can imitate in my own life and hopefully give to others that they can imitate in their lives. She lived beyond her husband, her 3 children, the Washingtons, and she lived a poor woman. She never, ever had the status that she had as the Washington. Never got to wear the kind of clothes, eat, be certain of food on her table. All of that was worth giving up for the opportunity to be free. That's power. That's understanding what freedom really is. So I love portraying these stories. And then when people come up to me afterwards and go, oh, I didn't know, or even better, I'm going to go look at this some more, then I'm filled with joy. So long answer, short question.
No, great question and great answer. Another question, how do you select which historical figures to research and portray?
Well, they come in different ways. Sometimes I meet them and I go, I have to portray them. And it kind of is half and half. The other time is a teacher says to me or someone says to me, I wish we had somebody that talked about something. Oney Judge, I went to Mount Vernon. I took the African American tour at Mount Vernon, which is a fantastic tour and well done, very honest, very real. And they talked about Oney Judge, and I said, I have to know who this is. So I started looking. I started, researching who she was, and all I had at that time was this book that is called Taking Liberty by Anne Rinaldi, which is historical fiction. That was all that was out there. So you can see it's a well-worn book. That's what I began with. This was it. There was nothing else on her. This past January, I spent a month at Mount Vernon as a research fellow and got to go through all of the information about all the slaves and and there's so much more about her now. So my story has changed completely than what it was even last year this time because of what I've been able to go through and have the extra stuff on. I don't think that was the answer to the question. Other women. Okay, and so other women are, for instance, I portray Madam C.J. Walker, and it's because someone asked me to do a woman in business. And so she was the woman in business I did. And then I fell in love with her and went, oh, she's really neat. Again, this was before people were really talking about Madam C.J. Walker. So, think of what's happened. I've been doing this for 17 years. And in those 17 years, at least 3 of the women I portray have completely gone from anonymity to being known. And that's Oney Judge, personal maidservant of Martha Washington, Madam C.J. Walker, first African-American female millionaire, supposedly. We'll let that slide. And then Fannie Lou Hamer, which people are getting to learn about more and more as a voting rights activist. In the last, been hearing her name more and more than I've ever heard before. So it's working. Not just me, others as well. But we are having the unknown or untold stories out there more and more.
All right, great. And we had another question, but I feel like you've already answered it about, do you do extensive research to figure out how to portray the characters?
Yes, and then continued research. So, even before I went to Mount Vernon, whenever I I already have, and I never write a script. So if you're like, oh, is it a script? It's not a script. It's an outline. And because it's an outline, I can pull things in and out and move it around. This was a 30-minute one. So I was in my head, as you all were listening to a presentation, the producer in my head was going, oop, take that out. Nope, can't talk about that. Oh, add this. Well, move this around here. Nope, you can't do that. So that's what was happening in my head. But I have a ton of information and research behind that, so I can always kind of move in and out. So I try to do is not just do past extensive research, but continued extensive research. Every time I'm getting ready to portray again, the person again, I look over the old notes, and then I pick up one of the books I haven't read yet or haven't completed yet about her, or about the Washingtons, so that I can continue to have information. And excuse me, I apologize. And I'm continually changing and growing. All of the thing about leaving Virginia and going up, Martha Washington leaving Virginia and going to New York is all brand new as of January. Completely different. It's what I went up there to research, and then I found it. And I feel like I found the moment where their lives changed. Because that's actually written down that she took a long time to change clothes, an unexpected long time. And I think it was that I believe, I can't prove it, but going to Baltimore everything would change. She would never be by herself again until they got back to, George Washington actually wrote in his diary on the day, he said, tonight, the good lady and I had no visitors and dined together alone. That's how big that was, to not have somebody there.
Wow. Yeah,
and that's only one entry, by the way. So, yeah. So it was life-changing for both of them.
wow, yes. And we have time for one more question.
Okay, I'll try to keep it short to the answer.
No problem. Are historical places like Colonial Williamsburg, Mount Vernon, and others changing how they are telling the stories of African Americans?
Colonial Williamsburg has been on the cutting edge of telling the African American story for at least 25 to 30 years. They set the pace. Many of the people that began the process of telling the story there then actually went to other places and took on the position of being the director of African American studies at other places. So Connor Prairie got somebody that was from Colonial Williamsburg. Mount Vernon got somebody from Colonial. So they've been doing this for a long time. And if you want to know how it's being told, they started with doing an auction, an estate auction, which included the sale of slaves, to much protest. And yet afterwards, people could not but admit how powerful it was to have that kind of thing. So Mount Vernon is changing in the way it tells it, and has done a great job on making sure they're clear in their slave quarter tour, and they've been well on that. But they don't have quite the amount of people portraying people. So that is growing and changing there. It is not easy to be at such a public venue and portray being a slave, a person called a slave, because people come in with their own thoughts about who you are. So the way I was dressed right there, people may not think that I'm Aunt Jemima, but the moment I put a head wrap on my head, they will quickly tell me that's who I am. And they will assume I have no money. They will assume that I don't know how to read. They make assumptions, and then it's a matter of me breaking those assumptions for them and showing them the humanity of the person. That's part of my job, is to show the humanity. And that is part of what Berea does, is bring humanity and a closeness to all people that go to Berea, and hopefully that you'll take that out into the world. So I will end my talk there.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Ms. Sheila Arnold. This has
been
an amazing night. That hour went by so fast with you and Mr.
It did. I was like, no, yes. I have more to say.
Right. Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you bringing Oney's story. And I will bring in Mr. Thomas Ahrens as he concludes tonight's convocation.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Ahrens, Director of Convocations. express my gratitude to tonight's participants. Our wonderful presenter, Ms. Sheila Arnold. Thank you so very, very much. Very, very interesting and moving. The director of the Black Cultural Center, Ms. Christina Gamble, for moderating. Thank you so much, Christina. And our AV engineers behind the controls, Ms. Mackenzie Cotter and Mr. Kyle Wooten. Thank you both. Looking ahead to our final fall term convocation next week, please join us on Thursday, November the 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern for a presentation by visual artist Julio Algado. So be safe and good night, everyone. See you next time, and we will meet again. Bye-bye.